All right. Welcome everyone to our very special virtual poetry reading. Tonight, we're pleased to welcome Shaun Griffin, Anne Keniston, Gailmarie Pahmeier, and Lindsay Wilson. Before we begin, I'd like to give a shout out to Nevada Humanities and the Nightingale Family Foundation, whose partnership makes every event like this possible. Our host for tonight is Shaun Griffin. Shaun is the author of multiple collections of poetry. In 2014, he was inducted into the Nevada Writers Hall of Fame, and in 2006, he received the Rosemary McMillan Award for Lifetime Achievement in the Arts. His new collection of poetry, The Monastery of Stars, is available here at Sundance Books and Music now. Please join me in welcoming Shaun Griffin.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome everybody out there in virtual land. I hope you're able to hear us, and I hope the technical gremlins stay away from us this afternoon. We're going to try and hold the reading in a round robin fashion. I'll give a brief introduction shortly to my colleagues, and then each of us will read a poem and turn it over to the next poet to follow. If we have a little time at the end, we'll do some questions. And I'm hopeful that you're going to have a great afternoon. Our first reader following me will be Anne Keniston, and she'll be reading from her new collection, Somatic, out from Terrapin Books. She's a professor up at UNR, and she teaches English. She will be followed by Lindsay Wilson, and his new chapbook is Because the Dirt Here is Poor, and he's a professor at TMCC, also teaching English. Gailmarie Pahmeier will read after Lindsay, and her new book, A Bone of Ash of Ordinary Saints in Nevada Gospel, is just out from Wayne State College Press. Just had the opportunity to read it. It's a delightful book. And so that's the order we're going to be reading in. We probably will read each of us total maybe 13, 14 minutes, but it's going to be a great afternoon. I'm thrilled you're here. And before we get started, I want to begin with an excerpt from a poem by Lara Weatherington. This is from her new book, Parallel Resting Places. It'll be out from Parlor Press in January 2021. It's a long poem, and I asked her permission to read this excerpt. I actually asked her to join us today, but it's about 1 in the morning there, and she's got a toddler. She lives in the Netherlands. This is the first segment. No more bird poems. I want to tell you about birds in the world. How air moves like water and birds move like air. And the birds then move therefore and also like fish. I want to tell you how the arrangements of feathers and scales are both aerodynamic, that my leg hairs, when coasting downhill on my bike, move into such arrangements. I want to tell you our pattern of breath as it leaves the body, follows a line, and that line follows the swirling patterns of creek water, which is a spiral jetty. Oh, Smithsonian, I am with you. Which is a corkscrew, and whenever I see swirling in the creek, I imagine tiny birds coasting up and up and up, all on repeat. We're all on repeat. Even the double helix that never meets near the hibernating ovary. Now I'd like to turn it over to Anne Keniston. That was Lara Weatherington.
Hi, thanks everybody for being here. I can't even see who's here, but I think we all need to just have faith that there is somebody here. So I'm going to be reading, as Shaun mentioned, from my new book, Somatic. And I'm going to start with a poem from the first section and just tell you a little bit about the way the book is structured. It's a series of odes, elegies, and what I call arias that focus on various kinds of illness, psychosomatic illness, but also about grieving and the grieving process. So the first section is a series of elegies, and the poem I'm going to read is called Antidote Allergy. The poem, I will tell you, is about anorexia, and there's a she in the poem, which might be anorexia or might be an actual person. Antidote Allergy. Let lack be everything. Inside, there's nothing but transparency, not means, nor end, nor shape. Let emptiness rise up in her and fill what never could be filled. She liked to save new clothes because to wait brings pleasure. Small jangle of the hangers, all the tags still on till it was time. Now we have no time, which means we have forever. So let's wait a little longer till the soup's grown cold and we're no longer hungry. Soon she'll start to touch my injuries, not to defend herself or hurt me, but as an antidote to harm. Oh, I am burning sick. I cannot eat or drink or speak, so let me cling this little while. How dry and cool her hands are on my brow. And now she lays an icy cloth here where I'm on fire and lets me climb into her bed and stay there all night long. So our next reader is Lindsay.
Hello, hello, hello. Let's see. I'm going to start with a new one called, doesn't really need much introduction. It's called Skateboarding with Quarter Horse. I knew the space between my board and the pockmarked streets. How skating taught me air's weight by just traveling through it. How it troubled against my skin. When I say home, I mean flight. I mean the wind pulling the curtains through my open bedroom window, my mother pressing an ice bag to skin darkening with blood. Now you argue if I mean escape. I'm tired of all the old turf wars. Look, the graffiti on the alley wall just means I'm here, I want to be known. All our names, just another sound for want. Say them any way you like. Say it's taken me all these years to arrive back whole to my body. To that night, I turned a corner and found a quarter horse eating bushes along the summer warm road. The houses hinged by porch lights. I did what a boy does, race it down the street. And by the always lit garage, my meth-sick neighbor swore he just imagined a runaway horse chasing a boy on a skateboard before he turned back to being a man with his dismantled heart. And that spring held in his oil slick hand, and that great problem of fitting it back inside.
Okay, I'm going next. Right, okay. Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. I really want to thank a lot of people. I'm going to read from this new collection, but I would take all my time and probably half of everybody else's if I did that. So I just want to give a shout out to Sundance. Thank you for always supporting all of us. To Chad Christensen at WSC Press, just the coolest dude on the planet, and the Nevada Arts Council. Thank you for the project fellowship that made the creation of these vignettes possible. Just so appreciative. This collection is dedicated to the memory of two Nevadans I miss every day of my life, Joe Crowley and Kirk Robertson. And the manuscript takes as its premise the narrative that a couple has bought a little trailer and they're driving across the state of Nevada, staying at various state parks and visiting the communities around those parks. And they are distributing or spreading the ashes of their dead dog. So here we go. Day trip to Lahontan. We plan to scatter smidgens of the dog under trees, share the sandwiches we bought at the Lahontan market. In that quiet parking lot, we met Rodney, retired, now spends his good days riding in the bed of his son-in-law's pickup truck, enthroned on a cat-scratched recliner beer in hand, dangling a string of walleye, a couple of trout. We find a shady spot along the lake, spread our blankets, some ash, doze a little bit, wake to the chatter of a young mother. She's prepared for her 3 boys, 2 coolers of Cokes and snacks. The littlest one feeds Cheetos to ring-billed gulls. His new favorite word is hate. He hates the fish, his brothers. He hates the warm soda. He hates the tight life jacket. His mother reads the Bible. On our way back to our campsite, we stop again at the market, drawn by its 2 open signs, blinking string of Christmas lights, orchestrated graffiti of smiley faces. One of the bubbles says, "Hi, cutie." Then, "Not you, dude." Another says, "Kids behave." We buy a 6-pack and a sock monkey. We've come to see the transience of joy. Shaun?
Thank you, Gailmarie. Thank all of you. Yeah, thanks to Emily and all the crew at Sundance for keeping the poems alive in this really, really strange COVID time. So I'm going to read the title poem from this new book, The Monastery of Stars. My younger son was backpacking. He was on the Muir Trail, and he needed Dad to be a Sherpa. So I drove in one afternoon and hiked up to give him some more food for the rest of the trail. Muir Trail Ranch in the shadow of Mount Shin. Crossing Paiute Creek to the hot springs, 2 deer in the meadow, our feet cold in the stones of rushing water. My son, his oldest and first friend, sink to their waists in the hot mud. The reeds tease us to dreamfulness. I think of those before, the man for whom this place was named, and the ghosts of those who are age and stone, the rucksack, the burn of nightfall mosquito on the trailhead of yellow bricks. A blue Venus crawls over 2 conical peaks. There is no wind to send the mind to sleep. At dawn, pine needles float in the coffee, and the moon steps away. Halfway to 10, I set off for the Florence Lake Ferry. The boys scavenge my pack, and I empty the flask, a cairn on the granite below. I track their boot prints in the dust. 8 days to ascend the back of Whitney before work rubs time extinct. This trail I nearly died on before they were born, a river of snow that becomes the trout in their hands, and somewhere a fire skips into the Monastery of Stars. Anne, it's all yours.
Thanks, and I just want to say how lovely it is to read with my colleagues and friends who are such wonderful poets. So thanks, and thanks to Shaun for corralling us. This next poem is from the 2nd section of the book, which is a section of odes in which the speaker, poet / me, engages with the material of hysteria and the way that hysteria has been represented. So hysteria is now called conversion disorder. This poem is called Conversion Ode, so it refers to that, as well as the process of the poet sort of converting herself into an identification with this long dead hysteric. And the most famous hysteric is called Anna O. And that is someone that I did a lot of research into. So the poem depicts the process of just being immersed in papers, which I kind of was. I became very obsessed with this in the project. There's also a reference to Syrinx, who is one of those Ovidian women who was pursued and metamorphosed into what we call panpipes, hollow reeds. And then there's a little tiny reference to Narcissus at the end. Conversion Ode. And then I made an actual girl, hysterical, from husks and scattered pages and her dust. I licked her lips and then her scar, hurt, bruise, bereaved, her hiding place. I mean, she was a house I squatted in and found some random stuff to bind with string and told to dance and danced with her till she became my voice. Reed, oboe, syrinx, flute, her loose, unmothered mutterings in my mouth, scant, then scattered over the fields, leaving me free to stare into the windless pond of her, redoubled, pale, and faltering in her glass. Lindsay.
Thank you, Anne. And again, thank you. I'd like to take my little time to thank Emily and Sundance for having us, and again for Shaun getting this all together. So thank you, thank you. This next poem I'm going to read is a prose poem. I just couldn't contain it in lines, and the only thing I think you really kind of have to know is I grew up in Bakersfield, and Christo, the artist, and his wife Jean-Claude, they at one point, put up a bunch of umbrellas in the San Joaquin Valley when I was in high school, a big series of yellow umbrellas that were giant, huge, massive umbrellas. And they did a corresponding piece in Japan with blue umbrellas. And it was pretty wild to live in a place like Bakersfield and kind of realize we were becoming the site for this international art installation. And he died the Monday after all the riots from Floyd and everything that was happening during the pandemic. So this is a poem that kind of spills over the margins and takes on a lot. And a friend of mine who we've been talking a lot more lately about the state of the world. So the title of the poem is All Weekend Riots During a Pandemic. And that's the first line as well. All weekend riots during a pandemic. And that's not a metaphor, but it is, because what's art if it's only one thing? If a virus can stop your lungs, what's a cop's knee to a neck? And what's a table umbrella through a restaurant's window, but a busboy's silent voice breaking? And what's the sound of the broom sweep the next morning, but another tool trying to say what we keep trying to say? America, we are broken glass, a hammer to the window's mouth, teeth spilling out across the sidewalk where even now a cop presses someone's face. And I don't know how we clean up this graffiti either, but maybe we should just let it say what it says for a few days before we erase it. You do know not all deaths need to happen. Christo died the Monday after, and so forgive me for thinking about a riot of yellow umbrellas along a ridgeline, bright as California poppies, opening above the Civil War fort Cajon, built to suppress cattle rustling and natives, not fight the treasonous Confederacy. How the past overwhelms us, McGrath said. So forgive me for wanting to believe art can open like an umbrella, give us a lee, some shade, a place to rest. Refuge, we say, and we need to ask for whom. I spent the weekend gardening because what's a tall, middle-aged white guy at a riot but a window to throw a brick through? I couldn't blame the thrower. You see, after reading the news, my privilege was watching a pair of yellow finches fly among my flowers until one ate a butterfly, and I thought, time to build a scarecrow. We all want to keep something out. In the fall of 1991, my friend Dan and I skipped school to take a bag of ditchweed to see their umbrellas. You see, the year had grinded us down with the Gulf War and Rodney King, and we wanted to pass a joint in the shade of something far larger than ourselves. And then, through the San Joaquin Valley heat, a cracker boy and a black boy wandered the Civil War fort red-eyed and overwhelmed. Christos said, "We have a tenderness and love for our life. We know it will not last." And then a heavy wind blew an umbrella down, crushing a woman. So even art can kill. And today, you ask? Dan texts me his anger, and I send him a poem that makes him weep. I tell him my heart sneaks into vacant lots to hide so much these days. He says, "Go write." And out there on the sidewalk, the first drops of rain and those yellow finches opening and tumbling through the air like it's just any other day. You don't have to be there to say something. I know we rise under curfew today. The streets smoke and smolder and the walls look differently with all that graffiti. But Christo's and Jean-Claude's gift was forcing us to see our old landscapes in new ways, to imagine 1,000 umbrellas across these bloody hills and all these islands of shade almost big enough for us all. But once their art killed, even they tore them down. Dan says, "You'll know the end by its flames and ruin." Here, my old friend, I've brought you this gift, a mason jar of kerosene with its shop rag tongue. I'll light it, you throw it. This is, after all, something we should burn down together.
Thank you, Lindsay. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what to say. That was, stunning. Thank you. Gonna get back in the car, y'all. Take a little road trip again. This time we're heading south from Reno. And I got a question, and it's the title of the piece. And the question is this: where do you go from Tonopah? Because the Mizpah Hotel has clawfoot tubs, this is where you stop. This place has its own ghost, a good story about the lady in red. It's said she was murdered here, discovered by her husband in the arms of her young love. She'd have lived to wear her lace and heels if it hadn't been for the train being late. Her husband missing his connection, stopping in for a cold drink, seeing her, seeing him ascend the steep stairs. In Nevada, it's always about trains, drinks, connections, missed and made and wholly imagined. Because, you're told, Tonopah is for those with a thirst for adventure. You venture into the long shot bar, order steaks, a good red wine, and arguably the best margarita between Reno and Las Vegas. Listen to some old man chat up the young couple from Henderson who say this is the farthest north they've been, exploring their new state, transplants from Atlanta. The old man says this is the real Nevada, but suggests they also do Elko, Winnemucca, decent towns he's fond of, would live in, given. And because you love books and the beauty of dust, you'll spend an hour wandering the dense aisles of Whitney's bookshelf, where paperbacks are $1, hardbacks $2. What you'll take home is a first edition hardback, John Gardner's On Moral Fiction. Inside is a personal inscription, June 1978. Bob, it says, keep writing in New York City. Thanks for all your help these years in Tonopah. Best of luck. I'll miss you here. Love, Jack. Shaun?
Shaun, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Hey, thank you. I would be reading in silence again. This next poem is entitled Monument of What Is Not Seen. The desert is wet, the air scented with the moisture's frail cloth. A tumbleweed mocks thirst, and for the first time in months, the alkaline lake bed paddles to life. There is a bone of man below its white horizon. Every song before another man came to this place, murmurs beneath. The days stalk the rib cage of the deceased like two crows in the salt bush. Some torment of desire wakes to cloud sun and make-believe spring this late July. That it happens once every decade is immaterial. For now, the desert is a prayer of flight. In the distance, smoke clears to announce, this is the itinerant home of water. Breathe in, swallow, turn your feet to its cave, come down to the insurrection. Take it away, Anne.
Okay, so now I am in the aria section of my book, where I am speaking as a fictional hysterical patient. This poem addresses or speaks about a male character. It's a very long story to explain the ways that the male doctors kind of manipulated and controlled hysterical patients, but they did. The other thing that is relevant is that Anna O was caring for her dying father, and she became ill, hysterically ill, so much so that she had to stop attending to him. Yeah, there's a little bit of reference to, I read a book in grad school about the sublime and the relationship between the sublime, that sort of like awestruck terror that you feel, to sublimation, the psychological term, which has to do with concealing things. So there's some Freudian psychological terms in the poem as well. This poem is called Estrangement Aria. And one thing that I used to help me write it is I just looked up dictionary definitions of estrange and estrangement. Estrangement Aria. I let my life contain whatever he poured in, my instructor of handicap, doctor of broken dishes and water in the lungs, and made a pitcher and drank from it because he had withdrawn from feeling and affection, though I sat and watched until I couldn't anymore, foreign to myself, removed from my abode, having gone abroad and drove all day and night and tried again to swallow the enormous powdery tablet of his absence until the sublime was manifest at the crest of the hill, my affect displaced among the leaves and dirt, neglected, sublimated, and symbolic, till bereavement was my name and wrapper, punctured core, invented sacrament no one cared to share, though the loss grew unfamiliar as the brightly colored currency of some strange country, not without value, but having fallen out of circulation. And again, I pretended to dab his lips, my hands, the water and the cloth, my lips so dry. Lindsay.
Great, thank you, Anne. See, I've been going back home in some of my new poems. So this one's probably a good one to transition from the one I had already read with Dan. We've been talking a lot lately about the country. My head just gets back there. So this poem's called Bakersfield Vespers, 1999. The pitted, sun-eaten trunk of the Corolla knocks boom and bass down H Street. I look at Dan. Snoop, twisting a dread, he says, nah. The cool of the corner store so deep, we want to weep with the owner over the Angels bullpen all night. But as the sun halos a horizon of low-slung old houses, I press play on the pull-out cassette deck and think about the mouth of a cheap beer and the card table in Steve's garage they'll sweat against in the fan's slow turn, and how once Shaun's off work, the four of us will scrounge together $10 for a Wayside Park blunt. Miss Johnson smiles from her front yard, then stares into her plum tree. Ain't produced no fruit in years, but each spring I swear these flowers snow and melt against my skin. Dan says, yes, ma'am. And we watch her watching the last blossoms, trying like us to escape their tethers. Some shimmy in the breeze to Jimmy's chained pit bull, Luther, who pants in the plum shade, his tongue speckled with petals.
Thanks, Lindsay. The one I'm going to read next, the vignette I'm going to read next is called Letter to Lara from South Fork. And the Lara in the poem is Lara Weatherington. So Shaun, I'm just delighted that you started with an excerpt from her new book. There's also a little backdoor reference to the poetry of Richard Hugo. And one of the other reasons I'm choosing to read this, it's for Lara, of course, is because it's the only poem in this, which just stunned me. It's the only poem in this collection that mentions baseball, which is like unheard of for me. So I'm like, what was I thinking? What alternate reality was I in when I was drafting these? Because it's pretty much one of my major obsessions. And I think everyone who knows me knows that. And the Cardinals are winning at this moment, by the way, but I'm really right here. I'm really truly focused. The poem again, Letter to Lara from South Fork. Allow me these Hugo moments, my own little triggering towns. After your call, in search of good wine, we drove into Spring Creek, bought a case of layer cake at Coorey's Market. You'd love the place, established nearly 40 years ago, the year of your birth. The promise Gus and Sam have made, we will never ask you to ring up or bag your own groceries, reminds us of our simpler past. How amazed I was just hours ago to hear your voice coming in clear from Amsterdam on this sleepy Sunday. I remember the long wait for Sundays, calls home to St. Louis, cheaper and somehow more meaningful. Those were days of true long distance. I'd call my father, catch him listening to his transistor in the blistering square of his backyard, Falstaff in hand, the sprinkler tearing his tomatoes. We never spoke long. Last night, I listened to the Cardinals game, here where the Ruby Mountains tower in the distance, and the insistent wind makes the cool of the Humboldt River a true scent. It was a close game. I should have called my father, but the distance is long still. Did I tell you we bought carnations at Coorey's Market? Spread some ashes before we drank a bottle of the wine, toasted you and your own adventure. We wish you pure pleasure in your distance. Shaun?
Thank you, Gailmarie. So, like all of you, I've been taking care of my mother, or like you may have been taking care of your mother or father. At this age, anyways, that's what happens. She's in a board and care home in Southern California, and This was written on one of the visits to see her, one of the many visits. Right now, unfortunately, also like everyone else across the country, we can't see her. So we have to talk to her through a screen door glass, and that's been 6 or 7 months of this. Mother, I watched you burn the light of 6 lives, dancer, painter, Percival's sister, in an armchair at 87, as we moved you into an elder home. After 32 years of teaching, you swung the backboard to greet us. There was no chalk to write your name. The vowels on the board fell to dust. And even though they wanted to erase the powder, you waited for the next door to open, to enter with your Gauguin in the rose garden. I remember a mother strong, old gold cigarette, martini, and bridge. Remember the screen door slamming to work, where the farm worker kids you thought you mother too. And my father, alone in his Irish lair, could not breach the day without you. At El Adobe, we ate below the black and white still of the brittle Nixons, their red leather chairs almost surreal above the former Capistrano jail. This is how we lift the dust, how we push ourselves away. As we leave, you dance in the waning sun of your window, of the roses that remain, vigilant, hybrid, storytellers who blush in the flourish of day's end. It's all yours, Anne.
Thanks. Well, this is actually a good segue. This is another poem about an aging parent. There's a reference in it to a story I read when I lived in Boston in the Boston Globe about a girl who was injured and was sort of worshipped as a kind of modern day saint. Her name is Audrey Santo, so all of that is true. Profusion Ode. Because my father could not walk, I dreamed we walked beside a double lake where marsh birds gathered in profusion, beautiful long-legged waders visible without binoculars. And then someone began to name them while the dusk collapsed around us, but slowly, delaying the dark. Or I delayed it since I made this scene, inserting light, then bits of dark to fill the gaps. The girl who fell into an empty pool and broke her spine didn't become catatonic or brain dead, not a cripple, her mother thought, but a vessel made by God for other people's suffering, a wick or cipher, still and steadfast, no matter what she'd taken in. Most afternoons, the sick gathered outside her window to watch her on her special bed, thin-limbed, dressed all in pink, until they felt or thought they felt their pain lift away, then knelt all over the lawn to worship her. In my dream, my father thanked me, but I knew his pain continued, contained and hidden by his bones and flesh, like something he refused to give me out of mercy. Then we were driving through the dark, the two of us exhausted, until I found a stranger's house with people sleeping everywhere, on beds and chairs, the floor. Casually, he walked in and lay down and slept among them. This must be how I tally what I haven't lost yet, lifting each loved thing, then relinquishing it to mourn its loss, redundantly desiring sleep because I'm already sleeping. I had to wake for the dream to do its work. And so I woke and waited for the thin November sunlight to enter the yard while the leaves fell down in bunches and two pairs of jays, deep blue, oblivious, flashed between the trees. Lindsay.
Thank you, Anne. Why don't I read a poem about taking care of an older family member, since that's kind of how it is. But I've also been thinking a lot lately about where I grew up and class and stereotypes and the way we look at certain people and judge or not judge. So this is a prose poem I wrote recently. It's pretty raw. I got some cuss words coming, but it's I really, this is a poem I really like this summer quite a bit. So here we go. It's called Gambling in Reno in Time of Pandemic. The spark of his lighter makes me look up. And I like the way he cups the flame all too knowingly for her, and how recklessly she uses her bad smile, stained teeth placed like a bad trailer park. And I swear I went to high school with them. She's run down good looking, someone who now would be lucky to have the debt of a cosmetology degree and needs more than a few tattoos covered with something new. And you might chuckle, even laugh at that, but listen, motherfucker, I'm serious. Not all our blessings are drawn straight. And despite the stereotypes and the laughing at, the thing that gets me the most is that guy she's with, because he doesn't look like me, but he does. Same baggy jeans and cheap white t-shirt, same stone, disinterested, faraway stare as he smokes a cigarette terribly, because he doesn't even like them. She likes them. He likes the gunmetal Zippo, the smell of lighter fluid, and watching the smoke drift through a still room. He gives me a look that says, I knew you once, right? Then they walk over to her grandma in a wheelchair by the goldfish penny slots, and she says, oh, honey, I got so many bonuses, but then lost it all. And what exactly would she spend winnings on these days anyways? And yeah, I know anyways isn't a real word where you're from, but this isn't about you. It's about the boy who looks like me but doesn't, how he wheels her out as the ladies talk about the almost wins, how outside the sun breaks against the horizon, but it's not like a yoke in the casino diner running over everything. It's not like that at all. I mean, I'm not even real. I'm just an ordinary speaker. I walk my dog for my high blood pressure, and I don't even get uppity over well whiskey, but I'll fight you over the last piece of rhubarb pie at the family potluck. And just so we're clear, I only talk to my wife about my tone. Excuse me. It's the time of night I like to lean over to an angry tourist and say, Kino's Italian for one more. We all want one more if we're being honest. And maybe the whiskey's talking, but what I really thought about while gazing at them is my wife and me. How once we snuck out her dying grandma from the old folks' home for a pot pie and to play some penny slots before she passed away. And we felt a little bit lucky stirring our free drinks like tonight, which came at 4 aces and a kicker. And so it's a 12-piece and 2 large size. And we'll argue about listening to Social Distortion or A Tribe Called Quest on the way home to a suburban neighborhood we do not belong in. Baby strollers and cul-de-sacs littered with Nerf bullets, and people who care about crabgrass and dandelions and what the color of your front door says about you as a family. Jesus, I didn't paint it. I mean, listen, what'd you expect from me, honestly, from this broken poem? And anyways, didn't I write this all for you? Hope is a cheap slut with a man around her finger. Didn't you know that? I mean, where the fuck you from? There you go, Shaun.
Thanks, Lindsay. Well, let's head to Highway 50. What the hell? Okay. I kind of want to show you this just a little bit. A lot of the vignettes in this collection use found language and then either comment upon it or manipulate it. And this big section here is actually the found language. And so the so-called poem is just this little tiny bit here. And it's called Postcard Highway 50 Shoe Tree. And that first chunk of language is from the actual back of a postcard. So Postcard Highway 50 Shoe Tree, a found poem with commentary. As the story goes, newlyweds started this. They got into an argument. She intended to walk home. He said, "You do, and you'll go barefoot." And he threw her shoes into the 80-foot cottonwood along the stretch of Nevada's highway. Over a decade later, the tree is a footwear phenomenon, its branches bearing hundreds of shoes. The trees sit between Austin and Fallon, Nevada, near Middlegate Station along US 50, the loneliest road in America. Good thing shoes come in pairs. They can keep each other company. Sadly, some vandal cut this wonderful tree down December 31st, 2010. The sister tree now stands proudly nearby, ready to take up the chore. Shoes by the hundreds have already decorated her limbs. The nearby stump still reminds us of the once regal tree. A middle-aged couple on a good-sized Harley Michigan plate stops at the shoe tree turnoff. He says, "This is kind of stupid." "I suppose it's art?" "I don't get it." She says, "It's what they call an installation." He says, "I still don't get it. I just don't damn get it." Shaun.
Thanks, Gailmarie. Apologies, my dog crept into the last poem, but you know, we're doing this live. We're not rehearsing this. This next poem is from my daughter-in-law's grandmother, who had her 90th birthday in Jaco, Central America, and Costa Rica. Mass in La Granita for Tita's 90th. If you believe a woman of 90 prays to a God women may know, and if the rain seeps beyond her pores to those who sweat the pews, her 8 children and theirs who rollick the humid sun, if the tumult that sweeps this land calms in the reading of scripture, then you will know her. Tumbler of thanks, a meter of grace on this Central American soil. What steals the tribe of women who belong to more than volcanoes and labor? This matriarch who depends on the wet upheaval. It's all you, Anne.
Thanks. I'm going to read one of the last poems in the book. This poem, like many of the poems, kind of like Gailmarie's, but in a more scattered way, uses found language. This poem cites from the theorist Kathy Carruth, who writes a lot about trauma, and she wrote an essay about surviving trauma. And I think she was talking especially about Holocaust survivors who came so close to dying that they knew what dying was. So this poem cites throughout from Carruth. It's called A Cruel Ode. She felt a loosening, like being touched or falling down inside the dark, almost a dark joy, almost a hymn to joy, as if one could claim one's own survival and stop protecting the little fragment that already has protective shield. The chip, the stain, her arms and shoulders felt tired. And then the stuck knob that never could be grasped fell off, and she went out to watch waves against the rocks, the plumes diffusing into air. And then she was in a room, the bulky, out-of-date furniture still there, but invisible in the dark. To have survived means having been compelled to make endless testimony to impossibility. Let her wake from the dream and out of death into having survived precisely without knowing it, so she can learn again what it is not to have survived, the dumb luck of having been one moment too late. Lindsay.
Thank you, Anne. my apologies for signing off on my last poem to Shaun, and it should have been Gailmarie. I was looking at the order of things. Okay, this poem I'm going to read is called Black Spring, and I wrote it after all the sort of Proud Boy riots, or whatever you want to call those, where they went to the capitals and started screaming at people. And it was just, I just couldn't understand it. It was like, this weird confusion between inconvenience and oppression. So this poem sort of came out from that in this spring. It's called Black Spring. When the robin returns to the old eaves of the newly painted house and must build a new nest. When you wake at night with a dry throat, your body hot in its loose skin, your wife sighing through the fever sheets. When that lone robin in your eaves calls out, cheer up, and then tuck, tuck, tuck. When you crack the blinds between you and she calls warning, but you hear bewilder, bewilder, bewilder. When behind her, the dry lightning flashes in the distance, where at daybreak you walk your dog along the wetlands, when you consider dandelion leaves for salads and cattail roots for roasting. When the news feed says they found a new Black boy on the roadside, his exit wounds ringed with flies. When the apologies begin and the boys who sleep with their rifles climb the Capitol steps, remember the calls in the suddenly leaved trees. Remember, even before us, songs rustled in the foliage unfurling without us. Remember to kneel in the scattered eggshells of the season. Remember to hold the one who fell instead of flew. Thank you, Gailmarie.
I just have been having a wonderful time, y'all. I just think this is a fabulous thing. And again, thank you, Sundance. Thank you, Shaun, so much for bringing us all together here. And it's just, this is fabulous. I'm so delighted. I'm looking and I'm realizing that we're getting real close to the end of our time here. So I'm going to do the shortest piece, right, in this collection. It's a one-liner with a 3-line title. So, and then I'm turning it over to Shaun for, I guess, some final comments. And again, thank you all so much for this. This was a blessing. This piece is called Overheard at Middlegate Station, known as the real Old West on Lonely Highway 50, while waiting over an hour for a BLT, surrounded by tourists clamoring for a table. I thought the map said loveliest road in America.
Perfect way to end the day. Oh, that was beautiful. Yeah, this has been great. So many rich and thought-provoking voices today, all of you. I think we're getting close to the hour's end. Emily, do we have anyone that wants to ask the readers some questions? Any thoughts from the readers?
We don't have any questions. We have a few people who waved and, applauded, but yeah, I would like, before Shaun, sorry to cut you off, I would just like to thank you all so much for being here. It was so lovely to sit here and listen to you all speak. Thank you, Shaun. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Gailmarie, and thank you, Lindsay. And if anyone would like their newest collections or past collections, we have them here at the store. Just put on your mask and come visit us. So thank you all.
Yeah, I want to echo what Emily said. Please support your independent here or wherever you are, so we can keep them around and they can sell these good books. I think that's probably it for me. I don't want to go over the time. I really, really enjoyed the places you all took us to today. You took us away from this moment. You took us out of this urgency and you took us into something that transported me. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the readers out there in the ethersphere who tuned in. And I hope you were able to hear us okay. That's all I have. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Emily.
And if you would like to share tonight's reading with friends, the link is going to stay up so you can watch again or spread it around, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily, so much.